So this video looks at the fundamental explanation of what motivation is and what drives us towards certain behaviours. And we need to make sure that we look at this drive or this level of arousal towards a certain outcome in terms of sport, but also clearly in terms of balanced, active, healthy lifestyles. So you might specifically get asked a question on that, and you need to make sure that your answer relates to bowels rather than a sport if it says so in the question. So what is motivation, and what's the context for what we need to know it in? What motivates you as a learner if you're learning a sport or in a PE lesson? And are these levels of motivation and arousal the same for everyone? How do we sustain a level of motivation? Because that can sometimes interfere with people's training and their willingness to learn and be a recipient to new skills or new attitudes. Why do some people lose that level of motivation, and how can we manipulate that maybe to try to regain motivation or sustain motivation? So those are some context you might be asked question in, and remember, this is to do with possibly learning a new sports skill, or possibly to do with your bowels behaviour, being healthy in your lifestyle. So defining motivation, these are key phrases. I think the top statement there, a drive to fulfill a need, is the easiest to remember. So motivation is a drive we have to fulfill a certain need, whether that need is to do with learning a sport skill or whether that need is to having a healthy diet. Another phrase there, the drive and the energy an individual is prepared to expend to achieve a goal, again, to fulfill a need, achieving a certain goal. And you have to understand that this motivational drive has two components you need to be able to describe. One is the direction of that behaviour, and one is the intensity of that behaviour. So I'm motivated towards a certain behaviour, and I'm motivated a certain level. I have a certain level of motivation, the intensity of that motivation. Let's look at those two more specifically then, these two branches. And it could be we use the example of, do I go for that early morning jog? Am I motivated towards doing that, yes or no? And my yes or no would be dependent on these two factors. So perhaps most importantly is the intensity of the behaviour, the degree of emotional energy. So how emotionally driven am I towards going for an early morning jog? And it's this degree of emotional energy that will determine my drive towards achieving that early morning jog. The second element of motivational factor then is the direction of the behaviour, and this is the course of action. So if I am highly charged and really motivated, very emotionally driven to go for that early morning jog because it matters to me a lot, then I will choose to respond in the direction of that behaviour. I'll get up early, I'll get my kit ready, and I'll get out the door. So this is the action, this is the emotional feeling about that behaviour. You might be more familiar with these two terms: intrinsic motivation, motivation that's driven by the enjoyment or the task itself. So it's within the individual, it's about doing, it's about learning, it's about achieving. And then we've got extrinsic motivation. This is about the outcome. So this, you might be driven by external things, outside things, and what you get for achieving something. Whereas this is about inside you, how you feel about it. Importantly, intrinsic motivation relates to more long-term perhaps changes, more long-term motivation, because people who are intrinsically motivated are much more likely to engage in tasks willingly as they want to improve themselves, they want to increase their capabilities. So if you're teaching a PE group, if you're trying to convey as a coach a new skill to somebody, if they're intrinsically motivated, they are up for it. They will be determined and they will give consistent effort in order to achieve that skill or that outcome. So they feel they have much more autonomy, which means control over their learning. They believe they can do it, they can believe they can achieve their goal, and they're interested in mastering the topic, not just winning or being the best, but it's about learning and achieving. And these learners have a drive that comes within them. They're out for personal satisfaction. They want to master the skill, feel good about the skill. They have self-worth. Extrinsic motivation can help, but it's more about those internal factors. Somebody who's extrinsically motivated, then might be more reliant on receiving some kind of praise or acknowledgement from external sources. So that the motivation for these people comes from outside the person. It could be monetary, so money or certificates or status. Competition can be quite an external factor in terms of motivating some people, and they're motivated to compare and ideally be better than somebody else rather than to play their best. They also might be influenced by avoiding punishment as well. That's an extrinsic factor that might drive somebody rather than being something that's inbuilt in them to want to achieve. And extrinsic motivators can be both tangible and intangible. So things that are tangible tend to be things you can get your hands on. So the certificates, the money, the medal, the badges. Whereas intangible factors might be praise or somebody smiling at you or getting recognition. However, you need to be a little bit cautious with extrinsic motivators because if they're used too often, they can lose their value and can lose effect. If you use them too often, again, similarly, they might be devalued. And it depends on the size of the motivator. If you offer somebody a very, a huge reward, it might be more motivating, but then they might need that higher level of motivation to repeat the effort. Whether you use extrinsic reward factors might also be to do with the stage of learning of the performer. So they can be very rewarding for beginners, for cognitive learners, particularly young children who are highly motivated by getting a badge or a certificate. But it can be a drawback. It can be inhibiting if people expect to have extrinsic reward or will only make effort if they get extrinsic reward, then that's not going to be effective in the long term. Overuse can really devalue them. So ideally we want people to be intrinsically motivated, and they are much more likely to sustain this level of motivation, regardless whether they get extrinsic reward or not. So the best option is probably a mixture, but predominantly we want people to be intrinsically motivated. We want them to believe that they can, so to have enough esteem and self-belief that they can do it. We want them to be motivated in the long term, so lifelong physical activity or participation in sports. And it could be that we give some extrinsic reward, we give them smiles and praise and appreciation. That is important, but setting targets and goals for people can also sustain their level of intrinsic motivation, which is kind of what we're moving on to now. It's important that people are striving for something, they are challenged by something to move forward, to try to master, to try to achieve, or it could be that their motivation or their drive is reduced. So this is the first theory we need to look at really, and it's called drive reduction theory. Essentially what this means is we have a certain drive, maybe to learn a new skill, something that we haven't done before, we want to master this and accomplish it. So that we are driven then to achieve the learning of the new skill. So our drive or motivation to satisfy the need to learn is applied. So we are motivated by this drive to want to learn this new skill. However, once we do learn this new skill and once we do master it, unfortunately, that drive now is gone, is reduced. We've achieved what we wanted to achieve, and so we have a drive reduction. And this could be a problem if we don't do something to accommodate this. So let's apply it to a sport. I've got a desire to learn a new skill. I am motivated and driven by that drive. So I want to satisfy that drive, and I will do my practice. I will listen to the coach, and ultimately I will master and learn that skill. And now I've accomplished that drive, I have a reduction in drive. The drive or motivation to continue to work is reduced. So I've ticked it off. I've learnt how to do a layup. That could be a problem then. So this theory is called drive reduction theory, and it can be applied to a sport or a skill, for example, like I said, the layup, or it could be applied to balanced, active, healthy lifestyle behaviours, possibly losing weight. I'm driven to lose weight. I'm motivated. I'm desperate to, so I watch what I eat each day. I plan my meals. And I do lose some weight, I lose a few pounds, and then my drive is reduced because I'm accomplished it. Of course, the danger is we then If we're talking about the sport, we stop practicing. Or if we're talking about nutrition, we then get relaxed and we start eating incorrectly. Could be balanced, active, healthy lifestyles, in remaining physically active or being motivated. A young person wanting to learn to swim, they're driven to that, they go to the pool, they practice. The child swims every week, gets really good. However, then because they get good, they lose the drive to continue going. And again, we've got to find ways to do that. Now, a coach or parents would need to maintain the drive of this young person. And what they might have to do in order to then increase drive again is to set new challenges or pay for specific lessons to improve the technique or make things fun, or, add competition to this situation. So there's a summary of drive reduction theory that you can stop the video and have a look at. Again, be mindful of how you might re-motivate somebody. So if somebody's drive has reduced, what might you do? And it's obviously having a balanced, active, healthy lifestyle is important. So this is the reasoning behind it. We want people to have a good quality life. We want to prepare people for a future, a long-term choice of activity. We want them to have the social skills and make friends. We want obviously to have the physical benefits, the mental benefits. So these are some strategies which a coach could use to encourage a balanced, active, healthy lifestyle. This was a 4-marker exam question. So drive reduction is one method that can be used to motivate a performer. Use practical examples to explain drive reduction theory. So the yellow here is explaining drive reduction theory. So we've got this drive to learn a skill or to change our healthy behaviours. We take action to do it because we're motivated. We accomplish that, we form a new habit, or we learn the skill or change the behaviour, and then our drive is reduced. Now, our drive might be reduced if we do too much practice, if we overlearn a skill, if things get boring, or if we just master it. And then what we need is we need new tasks, we need new goals, we need perhaps a break from that particular drill or learning that skill, or make the task or the challenge more demanding for the learner.